Thanks everyone for joining us for the August 12th meeting of the Astrobiology Science Communication Guild. Today is August 12th, 2024, and today we are very excited to have a guest who is our very own guild member, Sarah Treadwell, aka Space Case Sarah. And she has a very cool SciComm project that she's been working on that she is going to share with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the mic. Take it away. Sarah, tell us everything.
Thank you. And again, like I said, I am so flattered so many people are here, and it actually makes me a little nervous. And I don't get nervous that easily, but I'm a little nervous. So thank you. And what I put together for you today was a little bit of an introduction to me and my background and my origin story, if you will, a slight demo of OpenSpace and these new elements that got put into OpenSpace. So these are brand new. There's definitely going to be, I'm sure, more added and things worked out as we go along. And then, and then just a little wrap up kind of talking about how this project has completely shifted a huge part of my career. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And part of the reason I decided to add a lot of backstory for you all is I was doing some outreach recently at another location, actually relating around a different expedition I just got back from. And all these people were like, wait, who are you? How did you get into this? What's your degree in? Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, all right, I think I need to always add who I am a little bit in my story. So I'm going to share this and tell you a bit about where I come from and how this all came about. Where is my share screen? Here we go. Okay, I will just share my desktop because that's going to be easier. Bear with me one second. And all right, what did I do? Sorry, hold on. Technical difficulties, not that we didn't do this already. Oh, come back. Where'd you go? I'm off to a great start. All right, present. Okay, so my name is Sarah Treadwell. I am a student in the PhD program at the University of North Dakota. I don't live in North Dakota. I actually go to school there virtually. I live a little west of Rockford, not Rockford. I'm nervous. I live a little west of Chicago in a town called Rockford. And I am also an education and science communication affiliate with Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. So again, a little introduction and origin story of mine. And this, I wanted to add quickly in for everyone who is more early career or perhaps maybe new to your career, or I don't know, really at any point of your career, just a gentle reminder that I am showing you the peak moments of what has been quite an up and down journey. I think everyone knows that it takes a lot of hard work to become successful in anything. But I think we also sometimes forget that when we listen to stories like I'm going to share with you. I've had a lot of no's and a lot of fails. So please take everything that I'm sharing, remembering that there's been a lot of failure as well as these wins. So a little background to Space Case Sarah, who I am. Like Spet said, I am a professional science communicator, and my interest is in astrobiology. However, I've definitely gotten more into communicating science in a broader sense of connecting Earth and space science. So my adventures have definitely started turning into going on ocean expeditions. And I actually recently just got back from Chile. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well. So it's definitely grown and morphed, this brand, as time has gone on, which is kind of fun. And I've kind of given up trying to completely define who I am anymore. But I grew up not too far from where I currently live in a town called Elkhorn. And I grew up in a very, very, very small closed community that was actually young Earth creationist. And I bring this part up because it is a really important part of my story. I had a relatively happy childhood, and I was very close with my older sister. And my life was music. My mom was a band teacher. I used to go to band lessons with her growing up. I had a really good ear for music, and that was what I knew. Music was just absolutely everything for me. So when I got to the point of graduating high school, and I went to these private schools all the way up through K through 12, not knowing really any science at all, I got to graduation, and my high school counselor said to me that if I didn't make a choice on what I wanted to do after high school, I would not achieve too much of anything at all. And that really stuck with me. That's why it's in this presentation. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I defaulted to the thing I knew, and I went to school for music, and I was obviously super cool. So I was a vocal performance major, and I studied opera for 3 years, and kind of got burned out by that experience. I love music still, but I don't love it professionally. I don't love it to pursue it as a career. And I learned that after about 3 years of working on that degree. So I ended up dropping out of school at that point. And this is also kind of a crucial timing, personal-wise life point where the small, closed, young earth creationist church that I was raised in figured out that I was not going to church anymore. So I got kicked out, and then my family stopped talking to me. So I ended up really latching onto what I had at the time, which was my now ex-husband, but he got a job in upstate New York. So we moved to upstate New York, where I finished my degree because I knew that was important at Southern New Hampshire University. And I started working at the National Museum of Horse Racing in fund and development. So really, really thought that that was going to be what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I really enjoyed the very flexible kind of skills that you need to have to do fundraising and development for nonprofits. You kind of have to wear a ton of hats. And so I learned a lot really quick. And then I had my 2 kids kind of bam, bam, back to back. Addie and Miles, they're much bigger now, but I had 2 under 2. So that was kind of my life. I was working in fundraising and development, and I had 2 really little kids. And so the turning point, I have 2 major turning points in this story. The first turning point, and this is a testament to science communication. I was up at like 3 a.m. with my daughter. She was a baby still. And I was just scrolling around, I'm so tired. I'm just looking for something to watch. And there was a show on TV called Cosmos. And again, I was raised, with practically no science knowledge and went to school for music and English. So like, I just never really paid attention to science. So when I saw this and I saw the cosmic calendar from that point of the Big Bang to when humans show up in the story on, December 31st at 11:30 p.m., I was completely blown away. And I just sat there and thought, oh my gosh, what else don't I know? I felt like I had been kind of denied and left out of so many cool things. So this started my journey into what I'm doing now. I started watching and reading everything that you could possibly think of. I really fell in love in particular with the Voyager missions and the Golden Records. I also learned about astrobiology at this time and was like, wow, this is like the coolest thing I've ever heard of. I wish I could go back in time and go back to school for biology. But I kind of felt like I couldn't at that time because it just seemed like I was too old and I had kids, you know what I mean? So I really just poured myself into whatever I could get into, which was astronomy. And I kind of accidentally started science communication at that point. I really enjoyed taking my telescope out and showing people the moon. So it was like I knew that was what I wanted to do before I even knew what I wanted to do. But for everything at that time, it was just a hobby. And so the second big turning point for me in my origin story, if you will, was this car accident. I was coming home from an astronomy event, and someone abruptly just stopped in the middle of the road, and I slammed into them and overcorrected, set off all my airbags. And it was terrifying. And the things that I was thinking about at that time were not the things that someone should be thinking about when they're almost rolling their car over. I was thinking about how much my ex-husband was going to be upset. I wasn't thinking about my children. And so that was my snap wake up moment. And I decided, you know what? I really love this science thing. And I love astrobiology. And I don't know how I'm going to do this with an English degree, but I'm going to get into astrobiology, one way or the other. And so the next day I just started asking people, asking around. I'm actually really excited. Rush is in the group right now because this is where I met Rush, and you're actually a part of this story. I started asking people that I knew in my community, like, I don't know how to do this. What would you suggest? And someone suggested that I go to Rock Valley College, which is in my town, and just start taking science. Just take all the science classes that you can. And I this person actually was a professor at Northern Illinois University. I also started kind of hanging out with this lab that had some astrobiology grants, and was really welcomed. I found that very overwhelming, actually. Everyone was very acceptant and like, yeah, you kind of have this weird backstory, but like, you're welcome here, and see how far you can go. Everyone was really encouraging. So started kind of trucking along this course, thinking I'm going to maybe go for a master's in biology, which was going to be a reach. I'm not going to deny that. And then the pandemic happened. And I tried some at-home labs during that time, and those were terrible. And I kind of panicked, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to lose my momentum. And at this point too, I was also really starting to make some changes in my personal life. I was starting the process of a divorce, and I didn't know what to do. And it was actually Rush, who's here, that said, hey, there's this group called Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, and they have internships and they're pulling them all online. Maybe you could do something there. And I went, okay. So I applied, and I got into the communicating earth and science topics at Blue Marble. And that really changed my perspective of what science communication is and who does it. And it kind of fit with my undergrad, and I realized I really like this. So I kind of joke with them that I'm the intern who never left. I had my internship, and when that was finished, they asked if I wanted to stay on as a visiting scholar and help produce Ask an Astrobiologist. If you've seen that show, I am one of the people that's in the background still to this day that forward your questions to Graham. And I also find all that B-roll stuff. Yeah, and now I'm a full affiliate. So I think I'm one of two people that have gone from the internship all the way up to full affiliation. So that has been a really important part of my career, getting to be affiliated with them. And then another huge part of my story that really changed everything is I was kind of encouraged by other people who did science communication to get into scuba diving. A lot of people dive in science, and I just kind of thought, why not? That seems like fun. And diving changed everything for me. That is how I met my now boyfriend. And I have gotten to travel all around the world, whether it's diving or whether it's something that he and I have gone to do together. And I've traveled in more countries in the past 2 years than my entire life. So that really, I think, has helped with my confidence in taking risks and just going for all the things. And again, we're going back to that iceberg model. There's a lot of no's in between the yeses and the cool stuff. But we've gone all around the world together and dove, and it's just been, I think, a big part of the story too. One of the things I've done, I was a communicator for the Mars Desert Research Station. And again, I just kind of got that confidence to just start applying for things. Even if I wasn't sure if I was totally qualified, I just felt like, you know what, what's the worst they're going to say? They're going to say no, right? And then I had a radio show for a while on iRock Space Radio, and I'm a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador. Everything just started compiling on top of each other, including collecting telescopes. I like to joke that Dobbs are like stray dogs. They follow you home. So my fleet of telescopes continued to grow. I kept doing the sidewalk outreach, just like how it started at the beginning. And then more opportunities kind of kept popping up. I did a summer series with Dr. Z when he was still at NASA. So just opportunities just kept popping up. And it was really cool. So then I made the choice, instead of going for a master's in biology, I would go back for a master's in communications. So we're getting kind of to present day here. So I went back actually to where I started my undergrad for music. I went back and got my master's in communications at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and I focused everything on science communication. And then I enjoyed that experience so much that I decided to go for a PhD. And that is how I ended up at the University of North Dakota, because they have a fantastic online communications program. And immediately getting into that, I got asked to be the communicator for a project that is doing work up in the Arctic. We are partnering with the Krell Lab, and we're funded by the Department of Defense to basically study how infrastructure is breaking down in the road systems because of climate change and permafrost breaking down too quickly. So that is kind of a really fast sweep of my story. Why are you here? So I will bring you now to the main reason you're here. During all of this, one of the biggest things I said, what's the worst that can happen? They'll just say no. I applied to be an onboard communicator for the JOIDES Resolution. This is a ship that was funded by the NSF, and I say was, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second, under the International Ocean Discovery Program. And every year they would put out a call for communicators, and you could choose between 4 different expeditions, and whichever one you wanted first, you would apply for first, second, third, fourth. And again, the no's. The first one I that jumped out at me was to go to the caldera off of Santorini, Greece. And who doesn't want to go to Greece, right? I didn't end up getting that one. And they said, will you come back for your second choice and interview for that one? And that was the expedition I ended up getting to go on, which was IODP Expedition 399, which went to the Lost City. And I'm so glad that that ended up happening. I really was only kind of looking at where the ship was going in terms of where I wanted to go, because Greece just sounded cool. Whereas this expedition was like, yes, you're going to port out of here, go to one place in the middle of the ocean for 2 months, and then go back. And that just didn't appeal to me as much. But the Lost City is incredibly important to astrobiology, and that is why they were like, can you please come back for this one? So as I said, 2 months long on an expedition, one of the biggest things I've ever gone for. That was the most nerve-wracking application process I think I've ever gone through, to the point where I almost was just kind of thinking, like, please just tell me no. Like, just like the suspense was so terrible. But I got to be one of the onboard communicators, and it has truly changed my life in so many ways. So you can see in this picture there, I'm standing next to the ship. This was after our expedition. We went out there to core drill near the Lost City, and the original intention was to try to deepen a certain hole. What ended up happening was we went to a different location, and for reasons that can be somewhat explained, but basically we just pulled up a ton of core. We were in an area, and I'll explain this again a little bit later. We were in an area that you can access mantle rock a little bit easier than you can on land, a lot easier, but it's still really tough. And the most that mantle rock in an area like this has ever been pulled up was 202 meters. We ended pulling up 1,268 meters of mantle rock. So the picture with everyone pointing is when we passed that 1,000-meter point, like no one could believe this was happening. So not only was it like a great fit for me in astrobiology, it ended up being one of the most, I'd say if the ship had the top 5 things, the scientifically important things it's ever done, this is definitely in the top 5. So top 5 that we just got published in this week's publication of Science. So our first paper came out, published in Science, and we also had I guess I didn't include it, a feature piece as well. So the Science publication is really cool that just came out. But when I got home from the expedition, what happened was I came to my first guild meeting, and it was the July one. I can tell you that for sure. Last year, the July guild meeting, I came back and OpenSpace was presenting. And I didn't know who OpenSpace was, had never heard of them. I just was excited to go back to a guild meeting and kind of reconnect with the world, if you will. And they were presenting on a program that they had written, a guide that they had written for an astrobiology show presentation. And before I could even ask the question, they were talking about all these places you can go on Mars that you can look at on Earth. And they said, oh, but the only thing we don't have yet are hydrothermal fields. And I said, oh, darn, that kind of stinks. Because like what I just did on this ship, and communicated all this science for 2 months near a hydrothermal field, this would be really cool to use if there was a hydrothermal field in it. And at that point, I had someone popping up in my chat going, oh my gosh, this is what NASA scope grants are for. And I'll share more about OpenSpace. Well, you're going to get to see how cool it is. But OpenSpace is, basically a planetarium show, but you can use it for 2-dimensional flat screens. It's a really cool planetarium show that shows the known universe and lots of missions and things inside it as well. It's really flexible and it's great for science communication. And so Jessica Swan from the NASA Scope group was chatting to me and going, you could totally write a grant and work with the OpenSpace team to put this in OpenSpace. And again, what's the worst they're going to say? They'll say no. So I wrote a big old grant and I ended up winning it. And I won full funding to work for the past year on this show called Searching for Origins of Life, the Lost City and Icy Worlds. And it has definitely been my pleasure. I can't see anyone's faces right now except my own screen, but it has been a pleasure to work with Micah and Megan and everyone over at the American Museum of Natural History on this. We're kind of at that finish line right now where we're at the finish line because next week we're going to be debuting it at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City at the American Museum of Natural History. And it's going to be really cool and really fun. And you are all my test subjects for kind of a first preview run. It's not perfect, so please don't judge me. But I would love to share this with you. I'm going to stop sharing this screen for right now, just so that I can go get my video for you. So hold on one second. We're going to bop over to my desktop again, make sure I have it. And I will definitely answer any questions at the end for anyone who is interested. All right, let me share this. You're all going to see yourself, I think. So I'm going to just talk through this show a little bit like how it would be if you were watching it. So the open to the public part about this show is going to be in the Big Bang Theater, and it's going to be about 10 minutes and loop for a little while on 10-minute runs. So I'm going to give you kind of a sense of what that 10 minutes is going to be like, but then I really just wanted to kind of show what everything looks like in there and kind of give you an idea of how, if you wanted to use this for your science communication work, how it would work for you. So this is real short. Oops, and we're way back. No. Spoiler. My idea, my storyline, of course, starts with a great story. And that is, for me, very fundamental in science communication. I kind of credit Cosmos for that. And the story that I have envisioned for this is we start with a look at Earth. And, as long as humans have been able to look up and look around and look out, we've wondered, why are we here? And are we alone? And we started to connect these dots, these twinkling lights that seem to shine up in the sky just for us. We started connecting these dots and creating stories. And these stories were our constellations. And the constellations told us about when to harvest and when to plant and how to migrate to different areas. And it represented our mythology and our gods. And it helped us explain our world. And it seemed like everything made sense for a while. Everything revolved around us, and this was our planet, and this is our world, and it is all for us, until we started developing better tools. And so I always, when I do sidewalk astronomy, say, poor Galileo, look at those moons that you're looking at when you look at Jupiter. He saw those too, and he realized, uh-oh, we're not the center of the universe. And that's what we learned. We realized we were not the center of the universe. There were other planets out there, and it wasn't just us that had moons. There were other moons around other planets. And so we weren't the center of the universe. And I think this is one of the things I love about science. Every time we learn more, we have more questions. So we kept advancing that science. And as we continued to look out and ask these questions, are we alone? How do we get here? we started to realize that not only did we have planets around our star, there are planets around other stars in our solar system. And so we call those exoplanets. And we've been able to map quite a lot of those. These are the, I think, defined mapped ones in OpenSpace. So all of these blue circles are where we know there is an exoplanet out there. So I think this is one of those things that is, I love OpenSpace for this. I love giving existential crises, like that overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, there is so much out there. And how do we learn? How do we explore and answer these questions for astrobiology? Well, we're only humans and we can only go so far. And so the first place we have to start is our own planet and our own backyard. And so now I'm going to kind of step out of that narrator role and we're going to go take a look at the JOIDES resolution in OpenSpace, which I am so thrilled to be able to put this into the show. We're going to walk through, like I said, both sort of the show elements, but then also ways that you can use this for yourself. I'm going to give you a quick, like, behind the scenes things Sarah has learned about OpenSpace and controlling things. When you're in space and you're flying around in this program, it doesn't really matter in space if there's an up and or a down. I mean, maybe the real nerds really know that Jupiter's spot is, on the top or the bottom, but otherwise everything's a ball. This is a very defined up and down to have this ship in here. And so my flying skills have been challenged more than ever before. But we have this beautiful model of the ship. And like I said, if you are interested in using this, this is going to be available to anybody who wants to use it. So if you want to connect ocean research, this is really the first great tool that we can share with you to do so, because the JOIDES Resolution was an ocean core drilling ship that was funded by the NSF since the 1970s. Oh gosh, I would talk about this so many times, and I think the 1970s, yeah. It was originally an oil ship that got converted for science, and so it was literally a floating lab. Ocean core would get pulled around everywhere around the world, and then those cores could get processed and studied right there on the ship. And so I think that this is a really important vessel to have in here now, because unfortunately, as we speak right now, this ship is getting decommissioned. The NSF decided not to renew its funding for the last 4 years that the ship could have sailed. And unfortunately, there is no ship set up to replace it. So a lot of researchers, even when I was sailing, were very upset about this and would ask me, like, why does NASA have all this funding, but the ocean research geology stuff is not getting funded? And I really could only think that it really sources back to science communication. Many of you, I'm assuming you might be seeing the ship and hearing about it for the first time. This was a legendary ship. It confirmed plate tectonic movement. It found the fossils that had, seeds from one plate and seeds from another plate. I mean, it did incredible things. But back in the 70s and 80s, they would not even have berth for a communicator. So I don't think that they knew how important it was at that time to communicate what they were doing as researchers. And now we kind of see that in real time. But it's a really, really detailed, awesome model of the ship. So if someone who was maybe also a sailor on the JOIDES Resolution wanted to utilize this to give a tour of the ship, this is like incredibly accurate. It's actually kind of neat for me to walk on the ship again, if you will, through it. So there's a lot of cool things we're going to share about the ship. We're going to share about the science of core drilling, the science of the ship. It used to have, well, it does still, but it has a giant hole in the bottom of the ship that's always open. So everywhere you would go, the hole doesn't close up. So we could only go 10 knots, which is like 10 miles per hour. So to be able to go under the ship and show the thrusters and the moon pool and all these cool things, it's just a really neat way to share science in this three-dimensional way. And then I also have, sorry, I don't remember when I switched to some pictures, but we also have the ability to overlay pictures in the show as well. And that's really neat because Whether you want to use it or not, oh, that comes next. I'm sorry. I haven't rehearsed this too many times. So whether you want to use it or not, you can. But I like the element too that we have here where we can fly back out into space and we can talk about the geography and the topography of the area. So we went to the Atlantis Massif. And so it's really neat that we can back out into space just enough to see that the ridge, the Mid-Atlantic ridge here. And what's so unique about this, again, like I said, we pulled up a bunch of mantle rock, is that there are two plates pulling apart ultra slow. And so with this visualization, you can see all these cracks. That's from the plates pulling apart and the mantle rock is pushing up in that area. And so it makes it easier to access in that spot, which is why the ship was placed there in this program exactly where it is. We used the real GPS coordinations for that. So it's a really neat way to be able to tie in all of these visualizations from a lot of different perspectives. I don't have a way other than like a map to show that otherwise, but I can with the dome, with a show. So this is the picture part that normally would not be laid in like this, but we have the ability to lay into the show as well pictures from my expedition, which for me on a personal note is really cool. I don't expect you to necessarily use it if you wanted to do a show on the Lost City, but for me, it's really neat because I lived it. And so to be able to have my personal story and it's in this program now is really neat. Again, just from a legacy standpoint, it truly has been humbling and honoring to be able to be on something so historic. And it's something that, I want to be able to share memories of with my children and their children. And this gives me a really cool way to be able to do it. So we're going to get through this little montage here and we will go to the Lost City. And well, I don't remember how long I made this montage, but I think there's like 2 more pictures. One of the things that I want to just sort of remind briefly about when we go down to the Lost City, when it is visited in real time, it's pretty deep down there. And so the way that we image it and we see it is just through the view of a camera or a submersible, like a little hatch. So visualizing the whole structure is difficult. So all of the mapping done for it in the models are sort of like section by section. So that's what you're going to see so far. And we have lots of sections that we haven't even put in yet. But what you're going to see is like what I think is the most interesting and fun section. And then I have some video of what it really looks like. And it's really cool how accurate they actually designed the Lost City in these sections. And so one of the things I thought that was really neat and I left into the program as well is that I left the exoplanet circles on. So that way, even when you're in the ocean, you can tell like it's a reminder that we're looking and researching this area because we're interested in discovering maybe something like that out in space. So this is the IMAX flange. And the Lost City is really, really unique because it is created by, and here's the real IMAX flange, it's created by a process called serpentinization. So serpentinization is where that salt water is hitting that mantle rock that's pushing up in that area, and it's creating an exothermic reaction. You can actually see it in action right here. It's creating heat and molecules that are what we call the precursors of life. So many scientists think that life might have started in a place like this, not this one specifically, but that life maybe had its origins in a place like the Lost City and serpentinization. And how does that tie into space research? Well, again, how do we figure out if we're alone? We can't only look as far as we can go. And right now, we can't really get much further than our own little solar system neighborhood. And so that is what we're doing. And so the theory right now is that because Enceladus and Europa have these icy moons and we see water pluming out into space, the thought is that perhaps there are lost cities under the icy crust of these icy moons as well. And so a way that we're going to try to hopefully maybe get a sense of that is by sending the Clipper mission to Europa to try to catch some of these water samples and ejecta that are coming out of Europa. So this is the tie-in to your space science. this is pretty much the idea for the 10-minute show is why is the Lost City important? How did the JOIDES help research this area? And why is it important for space science? I am aware, by the way, of Clipper having maybe some issues. But as of right now, it is, I think, a go. So it's staying in the show. This is really neat that we have this now in OpenSpace as well. The longer version, I'm hoping to have more elements added into it. And again, this is the really cool thing about OpenSpace, is it's so design your own. You could turn off the constellations, you could turn off the exoplanets. You don't have to go to Clipper if you're like, I don't think that's going to go and I don't want to add it in. You could do other things. And so, for example, you could, instead of utilizing Clipper, you could maybe just go to Europa, which is where we're going to go next. There are so many ways that you can customize this show to what you want. And I think that makes OpenSpace so unique. And I also think what makes it so unique is being able to utilize all of these missions in it too. There's a lot of other planetarium softwares out there that have really cool visuals, but I think that OpenSpace gives you, as a communicator, the tools to really make it your own in a way that a lot of those other programs can't, because those are much more proprietary and designed to be a certain way. So you could go to Europa and you could talk about all these icy cracks and how we know that there's water pluming into space. And so the Lost City and the core samples that we took from the JOIDES Resolution are going to be really useful someday when we go out there and we look under that ice and hopefully find maybe another lost city. And if there is one down there, and if we think life got started with a lost city on Earth, perhaps there is, life out there. You could throw in elements like the James Webb. I really like the James Webb, so I give it a nice little swoosh as we pass by it. And then for me, what I want to add in for the long show is obviously Voyager. Like I said at the beginning, Cosmos and Voyager were super, super important to me at the beginning of my career and getting inspired to be a science communicator. And Voyager was really the first vessel that passed by Europa, and we realized, like, wow, it's not what we thought it was going to be. It looks like it's covered in ice. So again, I think there's just a lot of ways that you can make this your own. And I totally got the control window in the corner of the screen, so don't mind that. I just realized that. So anyway, that's kind of my short, really quick crash course demo for you. And I'm going to wrap it up here and go back to my presentation quickly. Oops. I am needing to share my screen again really quick. So can you see this whole thing? Yeah. There we go. So what is next? And I really want to give a big shout out to OpenSpace at this point as well. We're going to be creating a guide. This whole thing is going to get rewritten because I wrote it and now I want to redo like a ton of it. But we're going to create a guide so that way, if you wanted to run this show, you can do it yourself too. And it will give you instructions on how to use this. And OpenSpace has tons of resources online to understand how to operate their software, what you need for their software. So it's more user-friendly than you would expect. They're super responsive if you need help. So we're going to give you lots of tools to be able to use this. But one of the things that I did over the past year in preparation for this show was I used OpenSpace a lot. Like me and OpenSpace were like this. So Geneva Lakes Astrophysics and STEAM let me borrow their portable planetarium. And I went out into my community to just start practicing OpenSpace. And it was so overwhelmingly popular that in the course of about 6 weeks, I ended up going to 12 different elementary schools. And over 1,782 kids ended up in this dome. So much from this community support and having OpenSpace and just like literally blowing these kids' minds. So this is what I did this past semester, completely unexpected responses. I shared some of the quotes because I had to start writing some of these things down. These kids were like this girl was like, I really love this. I feel like I'm going to cry and get emotional. These are all in response to OpenSpace team. Like, this is what I would hear from these kids. And it has been absolutely the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done. Incredibly exhausting, but very rewarding. So I'm really excited to kind of in the phase 2 of this, have this show now. And I actually, with the partnership of Geneva Lakes Astrophysics and STEAM, we just wrote a huge grant to hopefully maybe upgrade that dome and then also give me some compensation to do this again for all 29 elementary schools, all the first and third graders. So we'll see. That is sort of like the next step. And then I obviously have my own show that I want to utilize a lot in this new dome setup. I recently just got back from Chile. That's the expedition I did some outreach on, and people were like, wait, how did you get on that thing? And what did you do? And blah, blah, blah. So I'm doing a lot of outreach for that. As a part of the Astronomy in Chile Educator Ambassadors Program, you have to do outreach. So I've been doing some outreach for that. And that was really neat. We got to go present at the embassy, the US Embassy, which was like, I was not prepared for that at all. It was really neat. And then I'm still working on my PhD, going into year 2. So I have a scary year ahead of me with comps and lots of stuff, and still working on the Arctic project. And I'm probably going to the Arctic this winter. And I don't know how I feel about that just yet, because cold is not my thing, but I don't think I have a choice. And then, of course, I have my 2 kiddos, and I've just been enjoying life, and they've been so proud and so supportive of me. I was actually in a meeting recently, and the PI on my Arctic project, he goes, "Oh, hey, Miles, did you know your mom is really cool and really smart?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know." And so it's been really, truly my joy to be able to live a life and live a career essentially in a way that models what I want for them. I want them to grow up and know that the world is this big, awesome place that you get to go explore and discover. And what's the worst they're going to say? They'll say no, right? Apply for the things, try, just reach as far as you can and see what comes out of it. And I also do this for her because my teacher told me, my advisor, that I would never make anything of myself if I did not choose something out of high school. So that is my petty, he was wrong. And I believe that is all I have. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to the countless of people who have helped make this possible so far and will continue to do so. And thank you everyone for coming and listening to me ramble for, I don't know how long that was, 48 minutes. Thank you.
Sarah, that was incredible. I loved everything about that, from the history, your personal history of the iceberg story, overcoming the challenges. Like I mentioned in the chat, I think everyone has our own iceberg story. I think it's great that you shared yours. I love what you did with the show and how you've taken it and reached so many young people. And wow.
Yeah. The show's been amazing. The school, I didn't mention it too, our district, only 14% of up to 3rd grade students can read at level right now. So we really need these kind of initiatives. Like this is like literally life-changing for these children. So yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts for Sarah? No. I also, in our effort to continue bringing interesting guild opportunities to you all, if anyone has any thoughts on how they might be interested in, are you thinking about using either an OpenSpace or a scope program in your own initiatives? That would be great to just share if you have any thoughts formed yet. Just based on the short introduction that you've been given to these tools. By the way, we have had guild meetings before on both OpenSpace and Scope. They are in our recordings, and I will post the link, or if, maybe Hillary, you can post the link to our website where all of our meetings are recorded. You can learn more about them there, and I did post the links in the chat. Let me catch up with all of these chat questions.
So many people in here, I know. I just said, hi, Susan.
Thank you for articulating so well how you leveraged your prior skills and expertise to take advantage of new and exciting opportunities. Yes, Nick, absolutely. I have a question for you, if no
Sure.
one else does. Sarah, how does OpenSpace get, for example, you said the JOIDES Resolution ship itself was so accurately portrayed in 3 dimensions. How are they able to get um the vessels
The
in the
vessels.
software like that?
Yeah.
Curious.
Well, we were really lucky. I think, I don't remember how long ago it was, but California Academy of Sciences, first of all, they made a planetarium show that briefly teased the Lost City in it. And so Susan, who's in this group actually right now, had worked with them on that. And so she was like, oh, I know that they made some models of that. So we were able to work with them to get the models of the Lost City, which also like, planetarium shows are a monumental thing to construct. Knowing how much they worked on those models, and then you see the show and it's like, oh, that was a hot 8 seconds you saw that, and then they move on and you're like, oh my gosh, it's a ton of work. The ship was designed through the United States Science Support Program, which is what I was funded by to sail. So we were able easily to work with them on getting that model. And this is a really cool FYI to people. The models for like spacecraft usually are available for free by NASA, and you can use those to 3D print those as well. So Geneva Lake's Astrophysics and STEAM and myself, we're actually hoping to 3D print a lot of what's in the show to be outside the dome for kids to be able to interact with and kind of make that connection. So we're going to hopefully have like 3D touchables, and it's stuff you can, as long as you have the right tools, right? A big 3D printer and the material. But yeah, that is how we get a lot of that.
That's amazing. So it sounds like the open space tools are basically a repository where anyone who has previously used them, it sort of gets added to that repository of images that you can then use in your show. That's an
Yeah.
incredible tool.
Yeah, and I'm sure Micah can speak more to it too, since they're in here. But and it's really neat. There are profiles in there for even like SLS and for Voyager, and it's really neat when it opens up. It pops up a little screen that will give you these timestamps of where everything happened in that mission. So you can click on a timestamp and say, I want to go to when Voyager 1 flew by Jupiter, and then it will take you to that point in time. So it's super, just, I don't know, for me, it's really neat because it's so integrated with real missions. It's not just astronomy. It's more than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a sign, like you said, Sarah, it's a very powerful science communication tool. It's a powerful way to visualize in 3 dimensions, and build on what others have previously communicated into, like I said, this tool, and continue to use it in your own SciComm outreach efforts.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say too, I don't know if there's any other dome operators in here, because I stumbled into this. Like, I had no idea I was going to become like such a dome operator. But if you've done sidewalk astronomy, right? And I think probably more of you have done that, and you show someone the moon or maybe the rings of Saturn, and they're like, wow, and they're so blown away. Domes are the closest thing I've found to that as well. I mean, if not even more, it's just so overwhelming, and you're just enveloped in this. Yeah, like from an artistic standpoint, it is one of the best forms of science communication I think I've found.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important to use particularly visual forms of communication, especially when you're reaching children. So that's excellent. And I see, Micah, your comment that OpenSpace doesn't just stand for open source, but also for the open architecture that allows you to add to the software and show data in context of what we have already. I see. And we have a set of data available, but would be happy to work with you to bring your data into OpenSpace. I see. And Micah, what you're referring to there is part of the, I suppose, seed grant funding program through Scope, right? if a scientist or someone who has these types of access to these types of data sets or visualizations is able to work with you in a scope type partnership, they can continue to build. And that makes me think of another question for you, Micah and Megan. Are there other I'm wondering, are there any other types of opportunities to work with you on creating your own open space science communication and outreach show aside from scope, aside from the vehicle that Sarah used? Because I think a lot of the folks on this call and in the guild and broader in the astrobiology field and the astrobiology SciComm field who are watching this may not be researchers, may not have that data, may not have the access to that data, but maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, Megan, you might have some to add as well, but I would say that, we would really be happy to help anyone who wanted to use or add or show their data into OpenSpace, regardless of what type of grant was available for it or not. If you get a grant that gives you the ability to, get some money to put some time. One thing Sarah can attest to is you need a good laptop to run this all on, so you can use that money to get the computer and stuff you need. But the fact that the part of our openness is just we want to help everyone too, and you could join our Slack and get in touch with us tomorrow and be putting your data into OpenSpace tonight, or I don't even know why I said tomorrow. But I'm sure there are other opportunities and stuff too. So Megan, I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
I mean, sometimes if we're doing a program or we have planetariums that we work with and they want to present on Voyager or something, they'll want someone who knows a bit about it. So sometimes we'll do some connecting, but there's not any projects right now that I can think of. But if you're doing any SciComm like Sarah is, we'd love for you to try out OpenSpace. And she, for this presentation, made pre-rendered videos, so they were all recorded beforehand. But lots of the time we'll also live fly. That's what Sarah was saying. She's flying. So we'd love for you to check it out. And like Micah said, we have a Slack channel, totally free to join. So if you're interested or just want to peek around at what's going on, we'd love for you to join us and talk to other researchers, scientists, planetarium professionals that are doing this work.
Thank you. And there again is the OpenSpace website in case you didn't catch it earlier in the chat. Okay, so I think that concludes our meeting. Thank you all so much for your time in helping Sarah get her show off the ground and rehearse it for her exciting debut next week. Sarah, we wish you the best of luck. Please keep us posted on how your show goes at the Museum, American Natural History Museum. There we go. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sarah, for your energy and interest in this and all the incredible work you've put into this. And we will all see you at our September meeting of the Astrobiology Science Communication Guild. Have a good rest of your Monday, everyone.